And today the whole world is focused on Bishop Strickland of Tyler, Texas, because he's been stripped of his diocese. But first, let us remember, for Padre Pio, something similar happened. And at the end, there was only one thing that prevented Padre Pio from being absolutely cancelled and being sent away to some obscure little monastery, and that was the reaction of the crowds, the people who stood up in support of Padre Pio, barring the way for him to be cancelled. Now, who is Bishop Strickland? Is he some sort of a mercaric type of individual, an abusive person? Well, in fact, Strickland is a pious bishop who defends the faith and Christian values. And yet he was deposed. And this amidst the inexplicable paradoxes. So at the same time, the Pope elevates other bishops who support sexual sins against nature and maintains agreements with communist China, for which the Vatican remains absolutely silent in face of brutal persecutions of Catholics in that prison state. Now, how Bishop Strickland was removed? Well, first there was a visitation, and then he was simply removed. There's been no clear, explicit official reason to date given. What are the concerns? And the first one is there fair play? Was a due canonical kind of legal process being followed? The second point would be, is the bishop's misdemeanor and the punishment, are they now in proportion? The third thing that people are worried about is there an agenda at play here? And then perhaps the most important, Cardinal Muller's view, the consequences, the possible consequences, and the fallout from this. So let's have a look at these 4 points very briefly. Well, from the canonical experts, they are worried. For instance, Father Gerald Murray is worried if he had the right to defend himself. Perhaps there were mitigating circumstances where they considered talking about the proportion between the crime and the punishment. Bishop Schneider of Kazakhstan, for one, speaks up. And he says, all understand, and even the declared enemies of this confessor bishop, that the accusations brought against him are ultimately insubstantial and disproportionate, and that they're simply being used as a welcome opportunity to silence an uncomfortable prophetic voice within the church. Now, are there perhaps agendas at play here? What is the big deal? Why is this particular case of Bishop Strickland so important? And it seems, Anthony Stein tells us, that he is the latest in a long line of significant prelates who've simply been deposed. And so Bishop Strickland is simply the most visible, the latest in this whole line. Is there a common element linking all of these things? And it seems to be that they've all adhered strongly to Pope Benedict XVI and his hermeneutic of continuity, that what is believed in future must match up to what has been believed in the past. And then the fourth point, can actions like Bishop Strickland's dismissal actually split the church? So right now, let's consider Cardinal Muller's bird's eye view of what is happening. And remember that he was the former prefect of the CDF. It's a sacred congregation for the doctrine of the faith. These are Cardinal Muller's words. Yes, what has been done to Bishop Strickland is terrible, an abuse of the divine right of the episcopate. And he continues, according to the commandment of justice, a bishop can only be deposed by the Pope if he has been guilty of something really serious, something evil. For instance, and he lists heresy, schism, apostasy. Then he weighs it up against what's happening in other parts of the world. For example, the pseudo-benediction that insults God and deceives people about their salvation, blessing people of both or of the same sex in extramarital relationships. That's a sort of example that could get a bishop removed. Arbitrary dismissal from the post of bishop of a diocese, in which a bishop is in fact appointed by Christ himself as his own shepherd, undermines the Pope's authority. So that's actually what is happening here. The credibility of the papal office is being undermined. It happened, historically, with the unworthy bargaining for the office under the Avignon papacy. And in fact, this loss of trust with the people was one of the main reasons for the reformations and the separation in Christianity from the Catholic Church, and its hatred of the Pope, who by his arbitrary actions had put himself in God's place. Cardinal Miller continues, the Pope has no authority from Christ to intimidate and to bully good bishops who are modeled on Christ, the Good Shepherd, in accordance with the episcopal ideal of Vatican II, simply because they or their false friends denounce these good bishops to Francis as enemies of the Pope. While heretical and immoral bishops can do as they please, cautions that this type of arbitrary abuse of power can in fact end up splitting the church. I do ask you to help us with this postulate by liking the video, sharing the video with your friends and colleagues, and also do make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. If you're not already subscribed, do subscribe and click that reminder bell.